Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is finally available in theaters, and this will be my spoiler review, so if you haven't had the chance to watch the movie yet, I'd recommend clicking off this video and checking out my spoiler-free review. And just to preface this right off the bat, this is not an Easter egg / breakdown video of the movie. I'm not covering every aspect of the movie. I'm basically just going to get into detail about stuff I either couldn't talk about in my spoiler-free review or couldn't really elaborate on. Starting with some kind of smaller stuff and working my way up. The romance between Gamora and Peter, or the lack of romance between Gamora and Peter, I should say. I liked that they didn't force a relationship between these two characters. We're dealing with a variant version of Gamora that really doesn't know Peter the way the other Gamora did. We're picking up with a Gamora that didn't have the character development from Guardians 1 and 2. So as you can imagine, she would go down a different path. And like I said in my spoiler-free review, I do think that James Gunn was kind of dealt a bad hand when it came to her character and what they did in Infinity War specifically. But just like I said in my spoiler-free review, I think that James Gunn did a great job with what he had. But moving on to something a little bit bigger in this movie, Adam Warlock. We get introduced to this character almost immediately, and his introduction is a fantastic introduction, sets a tone for the film. I liked what they were doing with the character, and then he started talking. Nothing against Will Poulter, I think he did the best he could do with what he was given, but I don't like the direction James Gunn took with this character. He definitely felt like an afterthought, felt like a punchline. He would enter a room and just fall over, and that kind of got annoying to me, because they teased this character in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We had to wait all this time to see him, and aside from his introduction basically setting the tone, setting up the story for this film, you almost forget he's there at times, and for the most part, it feels like he could be taken out and it wouldn't affect the movie much. Adding to that, his character is just one of those dumb characters, and it works within the context of the film. He's basically born early. He's a kid in the man's body. But at the same time, I feel like they should have played the character a little more serious, especially after his mother died. I felt like they could have set up a really good story arc for his character, but just decided not to. I guess maybe it would have taken away from the story with Rocket, which is the next thing I want to talk about. Rocket's story in here, or his backstory in particular, is one of the darkest stories ever told in the entirety of the MCU. I'm happy not only James Gunn, but Marvel in general had the balls to put this movie out and tell this type of story. It's not an easy one to watch. It's an experience I can't really compare to anything else because I haven't really seen something do quite what this movie is doing. For any animal lovers out there who have watched this movie, I'm sure it was not an easy one to get through. We thought the dog dying in John Wick was bad. That is nothing compared to what we see in here, because at least that dog didn't talk. The thing that really breaks my heart and is sticking with me to my core is that Rocket's first word ever was hurts. That breaks my heart so much, and it makes me want to cry right now.
Hey, what's going on? Nothing.
And the whole aspects with him and Layla, I expected her to die in this movie. I expected his friends to die. I feel like we all kind of saw that coming from the trailers alone. I don't know, maybe it was just me, but when that indeed happened, I wasn't surprised whatsoever. But what really got to me in that moment is just the scream that Rocket lets out, the scream of pain, the sadness, anger, anguish, whatever it is in him. It all just comes out in that moment and you can feel it. The High Evolutionary starts mocking him, so he runs over there, starts using his face as a scratching post. One of the darkest things I've seen in the entire MCU. What was even darker was seeing the High Evolutionary's face in full later on in the movie. Just as a quick sidebar, were you guys thinking that he was wearing a mask, or did you think his face was just like really stretched back? Because for me personally, the entire time I was just like, man, this guy has a really intense skincare routine. I was sitting there in the movie, I was just like, oh yeah, that's just space Botox. But once Gamora takes that mask off and we see what's beneath, it almost rivals that scene from The Dark Knight when we see Two-Face for the first time. But this, I would almost say, is more horrifying than that even. But back to Rocket. With the marketing of the film, we all expected Rocket to die in this movie, which makes me happy that he didn't, because it would have been incredibly obvious. But at the same time, I feel like it was also obvious to not kill him because of the marketing. So I don't know, it's kind of a catch-22. But yeah, mentioning that Rocket didn't die in the movie leads me to the last thing I want to talk about, the ending of the movie. None of the Guardians died in this film, and I'm pretty happy with that for the most part. Throughout the entire film, I feel like we were all worried that one of the members was going to die at one point or another. They even teased us a couple times, making us think they were about to die, like Drax and Star-Lord. Goes without saying, but of course, Rocket. But rather than kill any of them, they let them all go their separate ways and have a happy ending. They all get to have satisfying story arcs, they all get to come full circle in one way or another. Overall, it's a really satisfying conclusion for not only this trilogy, but for all the characters. Now, last thing I want to say is where all the Guardians are. Let's establish what they're doing. Mantis is kind of deciding to just do her own thing, go off on her own, and see what happens. I forget the name of the alien monster things that were feasting on the Harbulary batteries in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but those are her traveling companions. I hope to see more from her in the future. Then there's Nebula and Drax. They're both staying on Nowhere to kind of rebuild for not only themselves, but also the children and the animals that they saved. Cosmo's just kind of hanging out there as well. Gamora's back with the Ravagers. Star-Lord returns to Earth to go be with his grandfather, therefore stepping down as the leader of the Guardians. But that leads me to Adam Warlock, Groot, and especially Rocket. Rocket is now the leader of the Guardians. A more comic book accurate version of Groot is with him as well. You have Adam Warlock on the team, and you even got one of the Doob Joob kids on the team. I think her name is Phyla. I know she's like a big character from the comics. I don't know anything about her, so don't even expect me to get into it. But yeah, I'm interested to see where they could possibly go with this in the future. I know it's probably going to be a while until we see any of these characters again. In that post-credit scene, they said that Star-Lord's going to return. I mean, I imagine a lot of them are going to show up for Avengers Secret Wars, but it's possible we'll see some of them before then even. But comment down below, let me know what did you think of the movie, let me know if you have any theories on what could be next, and feel free to include as many spoilers as you want because this is indeed a spoiler video. But do me a favor and leave a like on this video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so we can fly away together in the forever and beautiful sky, and I will see you in the next one.